A couple weeks ago, Focus on the Family, I guess, if you're familiar with them, they're a Christian ministry. They have a variety of news outlets, and on one of them, they ran into a little issue. So let's listen in and see what that was.
Recently, here at Focus, we've experienced this on the Twitter page for our culture and news outlet, the Daily Citizen.
Yes, a couple of weeks ago, the Daily Citizen team created a tweet that said, quote, "On Tuesday, President-elect Joe Biden announced he had chosen Dr. Rachel Levine to serve as Assistant Secretary for Health at the Department of HHS, that's Health and Human Services. Dr. Levine is a transgendered woman, that is, a man who believes he is a woman." Unquote. That tweet linked to an article about Dr. Levine's qualifications for the job, something other news organizations had been addressing as well. But Twitter hid the post, saying it violated the rule of promoting violence, harassing, or threatening someone on the basis of gender identity, and warned us that violating that rule, again, may result in permanent suspension of our account. Until we agree to take down the tweet, our account is locked and we are unable to post. And let me just say, John, it was just a statement of fact. It wasn't meant to be mean. I won't tolerate that. I don't want to ever express hate, but I also want to be accurate in descriptions.
Yeah, and so far we've sent appeal emails to Twitter asking for some clarification and an explanation for how we could have worded that differently. And other news outlets also reported that very same thing, that Dr. Levine is transgender.
Right. And this online censorship is happening to many individuals, even non-Christians who are slightly showing a tendency towards biblical values. They may know it, they may not. For instance, the author J.K. Rowling.
Yeah, so that about sums up what happened there. Let me just read that tweet one more time. So one of their accounts called the Daily Citizen, I guess they post news and whatnot, said, "On Tuesday, President-elect Joe Biden announced that he'd chosen Dr. Rachel Levine to serve as Assistant Secretary for Health at the Department for HHS, Health and Human Services. Dr. Levine is a transgender woman, that is, a man who believes he is a woman." That was the entire tweet. Now, on my first glance at this, okay, putting that addendum on the end there, in this culture, this cultural climate, is asking for trouble. I mean, it may be a statement of a fact from the Christian perspective, but it is to some degree asking for it. Now, what happened, where Twitter suspended their account by saying they violated their rules against hateful conduct. You may not promote violence against, threaten, or harass other people on the basis of race, ethnicity, national origin, sexual orientation, gender identity, religious affiliation, age, disability, or serious disease. That's their policy, and so this was considered a violation, probably harassment on the basis of gender identity. I don't know how they finagled that in there. It doesn't seem to be intentionally malicious. But that was the excuse that Twitter sent them. So, what do you guys think? Was this an expected reaction from Twitter? And then of course the question, is this a just reaction from the gods at Twitter?
I mean, it's well expected, because the Christian world is going to be either silenced, or we're going to say certain things if we do talk. So anything that we say that we don't tolerate is going to be considered hate. So it's expected on any platform or network.
Yeah, and I think like you said, Calvary, something like that in this day and time, it may be asking for trouble, but that's only because culture has so crafted everything to where they want to silence the truth. So when the truth is now asking for trouble, then we have an issue now. Because now, like he said, I'm just stating a matter of fact. So now we can't state reality for what reality is because of how culture judges these things, since we're talking about judgment. So he's stating it from one vantage point, saying that I'm just stating a fact on something. They're saying, well, that's not a fact. That's your fact. but we're going to show you that's not a fact because we're going to tell you what you're doing, and we're going to deem you hateful for stating a reality which is in heaven. So it's something to be very cautious of, and it's something that we're going to talk about in a minute with this whole judgment thing. There's everybody judges. Everybody judges. The thing is that what's your premise of where you're judging? What's your cornerstone?
But something is that I'm wondering is, okay, what about Twitter? Like, what would be the way that they would want it to be stated? You know what I mean? Like, they just took their account offline. No explanation, really. No, hey, you should have said this instead. It was just like, this is automatically hate speech, so let's get it out of here.
You know, the way they define hate is definitely in response to, again, like I said earlier, of being tolerant of something. When you're talking about judging, you can judge either way.
Yeah.
See, if you judge, when we judge and say, oh, that was such a great thing that Biden did, I mean, he was able to give the transgender community an uplift because he hired the first transgender in that position. Am I judging? Yes, I'm judging. I'm just judging a different direction. And so when you look at that being said, that it depends on what comes out of your judgment. And if we're moving on to just in general judgment, is what comes out of your judgment. Is it something that can offend somebody? And if it can offend somebody, then now we got to figure out, okay, wait a second, you're offending this person. We don't allow offensive things on this platform. Therefore, we're going to go ahead and suspend you, and you need to either apologize or agree that you're not going to judge in this way again that would offend somebody. So, because we're not in the area of offending people.
And that's tricky territory because that's setting a standard. You know, you're saying, oh, that you are being offensive on the basis of this standard. This is what it means to be offensive. You can't say these things, you can't say these, and you violated this list of things that you're not allowed to say. Regardless of whether they may be an opinion or not, this is an opinion that we do not allow on our platform.
Right, because when you start talking about offensive or being offended, I mean, we got that's where we got to marinate which is the truth and which is error. Because someone is going to be offended. Someone's going to be offended with anything. So it's about which side are you standing on to fight for the offended. And that's the perspective that we Christians need to have, that, hey, the sword is offensive. Mm-hmm. When Jesus came and divided with a sword, it is offensive to those not on the side. So whenever you speak from the vantage point of heaven, it's offensive to culture. And that's why I said we got to a point now, I mean, come on, man. They can't even say the definition of what a transgender is. Think about it. They have created something ungodly through a person to say you can switch from this to this. They've defined it, and now they said you no longer can even say what the thing originally is anymore. Think about that.
Right.
And not only that, we have the powers in this world that you use, and we won't let you use it because we agree with the change from God. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's dangerous.
Yeah, because they're attempting to redefine things, saying that you cannot. And oh my goodness, I read 1984 a couple months ago, and that is exactly what the governing body was doing to regulate the minds of the people, was changing language, changing what was allowed to be said and what was not allowed to be said. Because the premise was, if you don't allow people to say certain things, then they won't be allowed to think certain things, and eventually they'll simply be unable to process concepts that are beyond the language that we've regulated. So I know we're not there yet. That's like totally dystopian, and we live in a world that's governed by the will of God on a higher level, so we don't have to worry about that. But it's interesting to see those same tactics employed in big tech.